Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for June 6th through 12th, which is the same week as the Queer Lit Readathon. This week I read 6 books, I watched 4 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 4 books, which means that yes, I completed all 10 books on my TBR for the Queer Lit Readathon. I also vlogged the whole week, and I'm hoping to put that video up on Tuesday as long as I can get the closed captions done in time. First this week I read America Volume 1 by Gabby Rivera. This is a graphic novel about this character named America Chavez, who is a superhero, and it gets a little bit weird. I didn't really know anything about this character going into it. She's got some interesting powers. There's time travel involved, which always confuses things, but I'm really glad I got to know this canonically lesbian superhero and see her go through some trials and tribulations, not only in her personal life, but also as a superhero. Next I finished That Could Be Enough by Alyssa Cole. This is a novella that takes place mainly at the Grange, which is where Hamilton of the Alexander persuasion used to live. At this point in history, he has passed on, but his wife is still trying to interview people and get as many stories about her husband as she possibly can, and this follows her maid as well as a dressmaker that comes to give one of those stories. This was a cute, lovely female-female romance between these two servants, and I very much enjoyed it. This is no surprise. I absolutely love everything I've read by Alyssa Cole, and I'm just so happy that we get these little novellas. Next I read The Summer of Us. This takes place all throughout Europe, but it starts off with these 5 students who all know each other because they go to the same school in London. They've been friends for years, and one of our 2 point of view characters has been planning this since middle school. Originally it was just going to be her and the other point of view character, and then basically their friend group decided that they were going to go along as well. Our one character is a huge planner, so she's been planning this for ages, and her friends kind of make fun of her for her planning tendencies. Whereas our other point of view character is a lesbian. All of her friends know this, but none of her friends know that she actually has a crush on one of the girls that's going on the trip. Add in the complication that the first point of view character is going on the trip with her boyfriend, but 3 weeks ago she actually kissed his best friend and he's coming on the trip as well, and things get a little bit messy, but this was a lot of fun. If you know me, you know I love to travel and obviously haven't been able to do that recently, so it was very fun to live vicariously through these students as they just ambled through these famous cities, a bunch that I still personally haven't even been to yet. Next I read The Miseducation of Cameron Post. This was the biggest book that I read this week, and it was almost 500 pages, but I tore through it. This follows our protagonist from about the age of 12 to about the age of 16, and when she's 12 she kisses a girl, her best friend, for the first time, and then the next day both of her parents die in a tragic car accident. This means that now she's being taken care of by her grandmother and her aunt, so at least she doesn't have to move cities, but she does feel really guilty that it was in close proximity to her kissing a girl that her parents died. Due to that and some other factors, that relationship kind of dissolves, but as time goes on she does meet other people who are also queer, which is lovely. However, one of the people she meets betrays her, and when the important people in her life find out that she is a lesbian, she is sent to a conversion camp. There she does connect with some other people, however this is a very abusive situation in that they're teaching them to hate themselves, which is something she even points out to an outsider that comes into the conversion camp after an incident happens. But because it's not a physical form of abuse, it's not taken as seriously. I thought this was a fantastic book and it was very well worth the read. Next I read Small Courage by Jane Byers. This is the queer memoir of a woman living in Nelson, BC, which is a place I have actually visited, so when she would talk about going to the library, I've been to that library and I got all excited about it. This is the story of her not only being born in the UK and then growing up in Ontario, but moving to Nelson with her wife and them adopting 2 children. Jane is also a poet, so some of her poems are sprinkled through these entries, and what I really liked about that is you would get all of this context of her story and then a poem at the end of it, and you could understand everything about the poem because you had that pre-context. This was obviously a lot to do with child rearing and the adoption process and what it's like to adopt not only twins but transracial twins, because the mother of the twins they adopt is originally from India and they are both white ladies, so they often get asked whose kids are these, who's the real mom, what language do they speak, where are they from, and all of those nosy questions that people just need to keep to themselves. I found this a valuable perspective because I myself don't plan on having children. However, it is interesting to see what queer couples go through in order to become parents.
Hi, Kathy from editing here. I was editing this video, got all the way up to Small Courage, and then realized I didn't talk about Bedazzled at all because I guess something distracted me, so I didn't go down my list quite properly on my phone. Sorry about that. I also read Bedazzled by Ryan LaSala. This is about a character named Raffi who loves loves cosplay, has been making it, streaming it, all of those types of things, really wants to make it in the world of cosplay. His mother is a typical artist, like the type that only likes the type of art that she likes and looks down on any other type of artistic expression, so she is not a person to look to for any type of support whatsoever. She seems like uphill. And in this book we get this back and forth between the previous time when he was falling in love with a boyfriend and the current time where his biggest competition is that boyfriend at the cosplay competition that he's been working towards for months. I really loved the competition aspect of this. I really loved seeing what happened between these boys and whether or not it's going to be a second chance romance or whether or not they're going to stay enemies and how things fell apart, because you don't really know until you get near the end of the book. I also really love the symbolism of the costumes that tore them apart, bringing them back together near the end, and it was just so lovely. I just really enjoyed my time with it.
On to what I watched this week. I'm not going to talk about the TV shows too much because they're TV shows that I've talked about week after week after week at this point, so I don't have too much else to say. Not to mention there are so many books in this wrap-up that I just want to be able to get through it. The TV shows, of course, were Malcolm in the Middle, Bones, a few episodes of Jeopardy, and this week's episode of RuPaul's Drag Race Down Under. The only thing I will say about the last one is that I can't believe that next week is the finale, especially because the last season I watched was the US season that didn't seem to end. I kept thinking it was going to end and then it actually ended like 3 weeks later. So the pacing of this season in particular just seems way more abrupt to me. The one movie I watched was the adaptation of The Miseducation of Cameron Post, and the book was better. I laid out my full thoughts about it in the vlog that's going to be going up later this week, but essentially they cut out the first 250 pages of the book, so we just meet Cameron right before she's being shipped off to the conversion camp. They changed a few little details here and there, and because it was fresh in my mind, I was able to point them out. And there were some really great scenes, and they were scenes lifted directly out of the book. Also, this movie had a problem where it would just continue a shot without the shot actually being important whatsoever, and it seemed like they were just trying to fill up the movie to make it to the 90-minute mark, and it shows. That being said, I suppose if you don't have the context of the book, it could be a fine movie, but it's not my favorite adaptation. On to the books I listened to. The first one I listened to this week was Orlando by Virginia Woolf. This was not my cup of tea. I don't know why this is super beloved. This book takes place over about 300 years, but our protagonist Orlando only ages about a decade in that time, and throughout the book is the lover to various different monarchs and so forth. Orlando occasionally changes genders and then also realizes that the person that they are courting are the opposite gender than what they are presenting in society. I think I need to track down the movie of this one just to get a better understanding of why this is so beloved, because I didn't get it. The next book I listened to was Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars. This is written as a memoir of a trans girl who leaves her family quite early because she knows that she is not going to be accepted by anyone besides her younger sibling, and she's taken in by these other trans women in the new city she moves into. This discusses different relationships and ways to get by, it discusses sex work, and it also discusses them becoming a big vigilante group to beat up men that are preying on trans women. The author wanted to write something fantastic, so in this book you'll also find things such as mermaids. There's a couple of cases where the character will say, "This is what happened," and then, "Oh wait, no, that didn't happen," and then it'll be a completely different and fantastic version of the events, and therefore you don't really know what to trust, but you just go with it. I really liked this one and would highly recommend it. The next audiobook I listened to was the group read for the Queer Lit Readathon, and that's Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi. The reading experience of this one was interesting because I had the physical copy, so anytime I was sitting down, such as when I was in the bath, I was reading along with the audiobook, and that helped me take in more of what was happening. This book is about a character named Ada who, as she is birthed, there are gods within her head, and they kind of control some of the things she does sometimes. When she comes into a point of trauma, one of those gods breaks away from the other gods and will more often present as the main personality within this person. This is one of those books that's so beautifully written that it really makes me want to look up the mythology that's kind of behind this tale, so I can learn all about that and then reread this and get an even more immersive experience within it. At this point, the only reference I really have for this story is the character is struggling with dissociative identity disorder, which is a very Western look at what this book is. I'm also intrigued by the different ways that you could describe this character that weren't necessarily on the page. For example, I find that Ada herself, without the influence of the gods, could be read as asexual, and throughout her life she has relationships with women, so we've got an M-spec, and at one point she actually presents more masculine, so we've got a trans-masc aspect as well. There's just a lot in this tiny little book, and I highly recommend it. The final book I listened to this week was Johnny Appleseed by Joshua Whitehead. This was a delight. Firstly, these last two audiobooks were read by their authors, which is just such an extra treat. This book is about Johnny. He grew up on the res, but he currently lives in Winnipeg as a sex worker, and he is called back to the reservation for the first time since he left because his stepfather has died. This book is told in a very non-linear format, so we'll go seamlessly between him being a child and his life in Montreal, and mixing between these characters that are in both places. You also get to see the very deep connection that he has with his grandmother, as well as the complicated relationship he has with his mother, as well as the strength and kindness of some of the community around him, while the rest of the community looks down on him for being queer and two-spirit. This is a book that is incredibly sex positive and sex work positive, and it is just such a fantastic read. I really loved the style of the writing in this. I'm going to have to search out more from Joshua Whitehead. That's it for this week. If you participated in the Queer Lit Readathon and you have any form of wrap-up or anything like that, let me know about it down in the comments below. Also, if you've read any of these books or you're interested in any of these books, let me know about them down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you're on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that is down below, as well as the link to my PayPal and my Amazon wishlist in case you would like to buy me a book. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!